My mother-in-law gave me a wedding present in front of 30 people. The box was wrapped in ivory paper and tied with a silk ribbon. Inside was a rental contract charging me $1,800 a month to live with my own husband. Everyone expected me to feel ashamed, lower my eyes, and sign it. My husband even pushed a pen toward me and whispered, "Do not embarrass my mother." I did not sign. Instead, I discovered why they desperately needed my money, watched them arrive at my home with a moving truck, and learned that the man I had married had never loved me. He had only loved the quiet, obedient woman he thought he could control. My name is Maren Alden. I was 35 years old when this happened, and I lived in Boston, Massachusetts. Most people who met me believed I had an ordinary office job in real estate. I preferred simple clothes, drove a modest car, and never discussed money. That made it easy for the Pembroke family to mistake privacy for poverty. 3 weeks before that strange gift, I had married Wade Pembroke. During our year of dating, Wade had been charming and attentive. He remembered my coffee order. He sent flowers before important meetings. When I stayed late at work, he said he admired my dedication. He knew I worked for Alden Meridian Group, but he never asked what I did there. Whenever I mentioned a development project or a board meeting, he smiled and called them my little property spreadsheets. I should have corrected him. Instead, I studied him. My grandmother raised me after my father died. She taught me that money should never be used to impress people. She also warned me that revealing wealth too quickly attracted actors, not friends. So I allowed Wade to believe I was a mid-level executive. I wanted to know whether he loved me or the life he imagined I could give him. For a year, he appeared to pass that test. After the wedding, Wade suggested that we stay temporarily in his family's old townhouse in Boston's Back Bay. He said it would give us time to enjoy married life before choosing a home together. The townhouse was beautiful from the street, but inside it felt like a museum that had forgotten how to breathe. Every room was crowded with dark furniture, fading portraits, and silver objects nobody touched. The house belonged to the Pembroke family trust. Wade's mother, Lorraine, treated it like a palace and herself like its queen. Lorraine had never openly insulted me before the wedding. Her methods were quieter. She corrected the way I held a wineglass. She recommended a hairdresser who could make me look more established. Once, she asked if my family had ever owned property, then changed the subject before I could answer. I kept telling myself she simply needed time. That Saturday afternoon, Lorraine hosted what she called an intimate post-wedding tea. 30 guests filled the drawing room, including relatives, society friends, and women from her private club. They watched me over porcelain cups as if I were being interviewed for a position I had already accepted. Wade sat beside me, calm and smiling. Then Lorraine stood and announced that she had a special family gift for me. For one hopeful second, I thought it might be an heirloom. When I opened the box, I found a thick residential lease agreement. My name appeared as the only tenant. The Pembroke Family Trust was listed as the landlord. Wade's name was nowhere on the page. Behind the contract was a laminated sheet called Household Rules of Conduct. I was expected to be home before 10 at night. I could use the laundry room only on Tuesdays and Fridays. I needed Lorraine's approval before inviting a guest. The kitchen menu could not be changed without written notice. The final rule said that failure to respect the family's standards could result in immediate removal from the property. A few guests laughed softly. Lorraine smiled and told the room that responsibility was the greatest gift a young wife could receive. She said $1,800 was generous for Back Bay, and that contributing would help me understand the privilege of joining their family. I turned to Wade, waiting for him to defend me. He did not look surprised. He leaned close and said, "Just sign it. It is a formality. Mom needs to feel respected." That sentence hurt more than Lorraine's performance. The ambush had been planned, and my husband had helped arrange it. I placed the contract on the table. "I need a moment." Lorraine told me not to be dramatic, but I was already walking upstairs. I entered the library and closed the heavy door behind me. My hands were shaking. I could hear polite laughter below, followed by the faint sound of Lorraine explaining that I came from a less traditional background. Then an electronic chime sounded from the desk. Wade's tablet was lying beside a stack of old books. A new message had appeared on the screen. It was from Lorraine. The preview contained only 7 words. "Do you think she suspects the real reason?" I stared at that question until my heartbeat slowed. Public humiliation was not the whole plan. Something else was hiding beneath the silk ribbon, and I was about to find it. My first move was simple. I opened the message. I had never searched Wade's devices before. Trust mattered to me, and until that afternoon, I had believed our marriage had some But the message was already glowing in front of me, and it concerned a contract with my name on it. The conversation between Wade and Lorraine went back several weeks. Lorraine had asked whether I would resist paying rent. Wade replied that I avoided conflict and would be too embarrassed to refuse in front of her friends. He called me a quiet corporate drone. He said I was grateful to have married into a respected family and would do almost anything to stay. Then I found the real reason. The townhouse property taxes were 18 months overdue. Lorraine needed the rent payment immediately. Wade had also promised himself half of it to cover a credit card balance from a gambling weekend in Las Vegas. My new husband had planned to take my money, pass it through his family trust, and use it to hide his debt. As I scrolled farther, the betrayal became worse. Wade had asked Lorraine how long they should keep me in the townhouse. She answered, "Until we know exactly what she earns and what accounts she has." Another message suggested encouraging me to combine finances after 6 months. Wade replied with a laughing face and wrote, "She will think it is romantic." I stopped feeling confused. The pain was still there, but it hardened into focus. My professional life had taught me never to make an important decision while angry. I founded Alden Meridian Group when I was 24, using a small inheritance from my grandmother to buy a neglected warehouse. I renovated it, leased it, borrowed against it, and bought another building. 11 years later, my company owned offices, residential towers, hotels, and commercial sites across New England. I was the founder, chief executive officer, and majority shareholder. Wade knew the company's name. He had attended a charity event where 300 people watched me speak, but he arrived late and spent the evening at the bar. He never looked at the program. He never searched my name. His lack of curiosity had protected my secret more effectively than any lie. I photographed the entire conversation with my phone. Then I emailed the images to my attorney and asked her to preserve them. When I returned to the bedroom, I changed out of the pastel dress Lorraine had encouraged me to wear. I put on black trousers, a white blouse, and the watch my grandmother had left me. Then I packed 2 suitcases. Wade entered while I was closing the second one. His first concern was not our marriage. It was the audience downstairs. "My mother's guests are waiting," he said. "You are making us look ridiculous." I asked him whether Vegas had been worth it. His face changed. For a moment, he looked like a child caught stealing. Then he became angry. He told me I had violated his privacy. He said married couples helped each other with debt. He insisted that $1,800 was not much money for someone with a stable job. "You did not ask for help," I said. "You built a trap." He blocked the doorway and demanded to know where I thought I could go. He mentioned the small apartment I had owned early in my career and laughed. He said I would come back after one night of living like a student. I told him I was going to the Harbor Crown. Everyone in Boston real estate knew the Harbor Crown. It was a new glass tower above the waterfront, with private elevators and some of the most expensive homes in the city. Wade blinked. "You know someone there?" "Very well," I said. He followed me to the staircase, promising we could discuss the lease privately. I continued down to the drawing room, where Lorraine and her guests were still waiting. Lorraine held out the silver pen again. I picked up the contract, tore it once through the center, and placed both halves back in the gift box. The room became completely silent. "Thank you for the lesson," I told her. "I understand your family much better now." Then I carried my suitcases through the front door. At the Harbor Crown, the concierge greeted me by name. My private elevator opened directly into the 2-level penthouse I had reserved for myself when Alden Meridian designed the tower. That night, I stood before the windows and watched the lights move across Boston Harbor. I had escaped the house, but not the danger. Wade was now legally connected to me. Lorraine was desperate for cash, and neither of them knew what I owned. Desperate people did not retreat when their easiest source of money walked away. They changed tactics. The next morning, my legal team began a quiet investigation. I gave them copies of the rental contract, the household rules, and the messages from Wade's tablet. I asked them to examine the Pembroke family trust, Wade's debts, and every financial request anyone in the family had made during our relationship. By lunchtime, the first report arrived. The Pembrokes were not wealthy. They were performing wealth. The townhouse had been refinanced twice. Taxes had gone unpaid. Lorraine had sold investments to cover club fees and maintenance bills. Several rooms had no heat because repairing the old system would have cost too much. Even the silver at her tea party had been borrowed from a cousin. Wade's situation was worse. He had lied about his position at an investment firm. He was not a partner. He worked in client relations and had received 2 warnings about poor attendance. His credit cards carried more than $90,000 in debt. He had also tried to open a joint line of credit using our marriage certificate, but the application lacked my signature. My attorney believed the unsigned application showed intent, even if no money had been released. I spent the afternoon separating anything Wade might try to reach. Most of my assets were protected by agreements signed before the wedding, but I changed access codes, alerted my financial institutions, and froze all attempts to add authorized users. At 6 that evening, Wade called from a new number. He apologized for the lees but not for the messages. He said his mother had pressured him. He claimed he had planned to repay the Vegas debt before I noticed. Then his voice softened, and he told me marriage required forgiveness. I asked whether marriage also required fraud. He went silent. Before hanging up, he warned me that Lorraine would not tolerate being humiliated. He made it sound like concern, but I heard the threat beneath it. The following morning, Lorraine called. She spoke in the patient voice adults use with a misbehaving child. She said Wade was suffering, and that my disappearance had embarrassed the family. Then she announced that she had organized an intervention. "We are coming to your little apartment," she said. "The family will help you pack, and then we will take you home." I asked who the family included. She answered, "Only the people who truly care about Wade." In the background, I heard several voices and the slam of a vehicle door. They were already on the way. I could have told security to turn them away. I could have called the police. Instead, I looked around my penthouse and considered what Lorraine believed. She thought I was hiding in a cramped apartment, waiting to be surrounded. She expected numbers to give her power. I decided to let the truth do the work for me. That morning, Alden Meridian was hosting a small investor reception in the Penthouse. The event had been scheduled weeks earlier. Bankers, attorneys, developers, and executives would arrive at 10:30. They were people Lorraine had spent years trying to impress. I informed building security that the Pembroke family could enter only through the main lobby and could bring no tools beyond the reception area. I also asked my attorney to attend with the documents she had prepared. At 11, my security monitor showed a yellow moving truck stopping outside. A black passenger van parked behind it. Lorraine stepped onto the sidewalk in a fur-trimmed coat. Wade followed, looking nervous. Then came aunts, uncles, cousins, and family friends. I counted 27 people. 2 men opened the truck and removed flattened boxes, packing tape, and a heavy dolly. They had not come to talk. They had come to remove me from a home they assumed I rented. I watched Lorraine study the 70-story tower. For the first time, uncertainty crossed her face. But pride pushed her through the revolving doors, and the others followed with the boxes. In the lobby, she told the manager they were there for Maren Pembroke, a tenant in one of the smaller units. The manager said no person by that name lived in the building. Lorraine smiled as if she had caught me lying. Then Wade quietly suggested my maiden name. The manager searched for Maren Alden. His posture immediately became formal. "Ms. Alden is expecting you," he said. "However, she is not a tenant." Lorraine demanded an explanation. The manager simply directed them to my private elevator. As the doors closed around 27 relatives, a dolly, and stacks of empty boxes, I adjusted the sleeves of my red suit. The elevator began to climb. When the private elevator opened, Lorraine's entire performance collapsed. There was no narrow hallway and no small apartment. The doors revealed a living space covering the top 2 floors of the harbor crown. Glass walls framed the harbor and the Boston skyline. A curved staircase rose toward a library and rooftop terrace. Original art hung above pale stone floors. More damaging to Lorraine, 30 influential guests were standing inside. A string quartet played near the windows. Servers carried coffee, champagne, and breakfast trays. Bank executives spoke with architects. 2 city officials studied a model of our next project. The Pembrokes entered holding cardboard boxes. Every nearby conversation stopped. Wade stared at the view. Lorraine lowered her sunglasses and searched the room for an explanation that would protect her pride. She found a senior banker named Richard Hale. Months earlier, his bank had rejected her request to extend a loan. She started toward him with a bright, artificial smile. My security director, Mr. Davies, stepped into her path. "Please remain near the entrance," he said. I crossed the room slowly. I did not need to raise my voice. "You brought a moving truck," I said. "How thoughtful." Lorraine asked whose penthouse it was. Before I could answer, she suggested Alden Meridian had rented it for the reception and allowed me to pretend it was mine. "I own this home," I said. Wade looked at me as if I had started speaking another language. He asked how a mid-level employee could afford it. Several guests exchanged confused looks. I explained that Alden Meridian had developed the harbor crown. I had approved the design, selected the contractors, and reserved the penthouse before construction began. Wade shook his head. "But you work there?" "I founded it." The words landed harder than any shout. I introduced myself to the family exactly as I did at business conferences. Maren Alden, founder, chief executive officer, and majority owner of Alden Meridian Group. One uncle dropped the metal dolly. The crash echoed across the stone floor. Lorraine recovered first. She accused me of deceiving Wade. She said a wife who hid her wealth could not expect trust from her husband. "I hid no company," I replied. "He knew its name. He knew I attended board meetings. He knew I traveled to development sites. He simply decided that my work could not be important." I turned to Wade. "You did not fall in love with me and then discover I had power. You chose me because you believed I did not." He tried to laugh, but his face had gone pale. He said money did not change the fact that we were married. He used the word "ours" 3 times in one sentence. That was when my attorney, Celia Grant, stepped forward with a black folder. I reminded Wade that our prenuptial agreement separated all premarital assets and any growth connected to them. The harbor crown, Alden Meridian, and my investment accounts belonged to me alone. His debt also belonged to him alone. Wade's expression shifted again. The shock disappeared, replaced by calculation. He apologized in front of everyone. He blamed stress. He blamed Lorraine. He promised counseling, honesty, and a fresh beginning. He was suddenly willing to defend my career now that he understood its value. Lorraine changed tactics too. She called me her daughter. She said the contract had been a harmless family tradition. She even claimed the moving truck was meant to help me bring my belongings back safely. I asked why empty boxes were necessary for a conversation. No one answered. Then Celia opened the folder. The public reveal was satisfying, but the documents inside that folder were the beginning of justice. First, Celia displayed the attempted joint credit application. She explained that using my information without authorization could lead to civil claims and possibly a criminal investigation. Wade protested that he had never submitted the final signature page. "Because the bank stopped you," Celia said. "Not because you stopped yourself." Next came the records for the Pembroke Family Trust. I had no intention of exposing private hardship, merely to entertain my guests. Financial trouble can happen to good people. But Lorraine had used the illusion of wealth as a weapon. She had publicly called me irresponsible while attempting to make me fund a house she could no longer maintain. The townhouse taxes were overdue by 18 months. 2 private loans were in default. Insurance coverage was close to cancellation. The trust had less cash than Lorraine had spent on my humiliating tea party. Wade turned toward his mother. He clearly had not known how serious the situation was. Lorraine demanded that I stop. For the first time, her voice sounded afraid. I told her the investigation existed because she had presented me with a legal agreement. Before entering any contract, I investigated the other party. That was not revenge. It was responsible business. One of the aunts asked whether I could save the townhouse. There it was. The apology they had not yet offered, immediately followed by a request for money. I said nothing. Wade stepped closer. He told me we could refinance everything through Alden Meridian. He promised to work for my company and repay every dollar. Only 2 days earlier, he had mocked my career. Now he wanted it to rescue his family. "You do not want a marriage," I said. "You want an emergency loan with a wedding ring." The room went silent again. Celia removed a thin document from the back of the folder. I placed it inside the largest cardboard box. Wade looked down and asked what it was. "A petition for divorce." I had signed it that morning. His face seemed to fold inward. He begged me not to decide so quickly. He said 3 weeks of marriage should not end over one mistake. I listed the mistakes: the secret lease, the plan to take my income, the messages describing me as weak, the gambling debt, the attempted credit application, the moving truck. 27 people arriving to force me from my home. "That is not one mistake," I said. "That is a system." The relatives began apologizing all at once. An uncle claimed he thought the truck was symbolic. A cousin said Lorraine had told them I was emotionally unstable. One aunt insisted she had always liked me. Their words meant nothing because the timing revealed the truth. They were not sorry when they believed I was powerless. They became sorry only after they learned I could help them. Then Celia handed me one final note. That morning, the bank holding the main debt on the townhouse had contacted Alden Meridian. The bank wanted to sell the troubled loan at a discount. If my company purchased it, I could eventually control the foreclosure. Lorraine stared at me. Every remaining trace of arrogance left her face. Wade whispered, "You bought the house." I had not. I told them Alden Meridian had declined the offer before the reception began. I would not mix a personal betrayal with a company investment, and I would not spend good money to own their collapsing monument. Lorraine seemed relieved for half a second. Then she understood. I was not going to destroy them, but I was not going to save them either. The consequences already moving toward them required no help from me. That was my revenge. I looked at Mr. Davies and asked him to escort the family out. Wade called my name as security guided them back to the elevator. Lorraine clutched the torn rental agreement. The relatives carried their empty boxes and dolly. Their moving truck left with nothing inside. When the doors closed, I felt no triumph. I felt grief for the marriage I thought I had, and relief that I had discovered the truth after 3 weeks instead of 30 years. I returned to my guests. There was no victory speech. I thanked them for their patience, asked the quartet to continue, and resumed the reception. But before the music covered the room, my phone vibrated. Wade had sent one message from the elevator. If you leave me, I will make sure everyone knows what kind of woman you are. I showed it to Celia. She smiled without humor and said, "Good. Now we have the threat in writing." 6 months later, the divorce hearing took place in a quiet Boston courtroom. Wade had spent those months trying every possible strategy. First came apologies, then flowers, then angry voicemails. He told mutual friends I had abandoned him because his family was not rich enough. When that story failed, he claimed I had hidden my identity to trap him. The evidence told a simpler story. My attorney presented the messages, the attempted credit application, the contract, and the threat from the elevator. The prenuptial agreement was clear. Wade received no interest in Alden Meridian, the Harbor Crown, or any property I had owned before our marriage. He left with his clothes, his car, and every dollar of his personal debt. The judge also granted a protective order limiting contact because Wade had continued appearing near my office. He was never physically violent, but I had learned not to wait for danger to become obvious before taking it seriously. Lorraine's social circle learned about the townhouse debt without any help from me. Missed payments create their own publicity. Invitations stopped arriving. The private club suspended her membership. Relatives who had marched into my home with boxes began avoiding her calls when she asked them for money. Nearly 1 year after the Tea Party, my executive team gathered to sign the largest acquisition in our company's history. Just before I signed, a news alert appeared on my phone. The Pembroke townhouse had entered foreclosure. The family had been ordered to leave. Seconds later, Wade sent an email with the subject line, "Please help us." I did not open it. Deleting that message felt different from tearing the rental contract. I was no longer angry. Their crisis did not feel like justice delivered by my hand. It felt like the natural end of choices they had made for years. That afternoon, my driver took me to dinner. Traffic slowed in Back Bay, directly across from the Pembroke townhouse. Orange notices covered the old front doors. A locksmith was changing the locks. Wade carried battered boxes toward a rented van. Lorraine stood on the sidewalk holding a framed family crest and arguing with a bank representative. The scene mirrored the morning they had brought boxes to my tower. Wade looked toward my car. Through the tinted window, I could see his exhausted face, though I do not know whether he could see mine. For a moment, I remembered the man who brought me coffee, sent flowers, and promised we would build a life together. Maybe some of those moments had been real. But love without respect is only a beautiful room with no foundation. Eventually, it collapses. I raised the window and asked my driver to continue. Looking back, my story is not really about a rental contract. It is about a family that measured people by appearances. Lorraine believed an old name made her powerful. Wade believed a quiet wife would be easy to use. Their friends believed that joining a humiliation made them important. They were all wrong. The contract led me to the messages. The messages led me to the debt. The debt revealed the performance behind the Pembroke name. And the moving truck brought their cruelty into my home, where they finally had to face the person I had always been. The lesson I learned is simple. Privacy is not weakness. Kindness is not permission. And forgiveness does not require you to remain available to people who planned your pain. I also learned that revenge does not always mean destroying someone. Sometimes the strongest response is to remove your protection, step aside, and let people meet the consequences they created themselves. Lorraine wanted $1,800 each month to teach me financial responsibility. Instead, she taught me the value of refusing to invest one more minute in a place where respect came with conditions. If someone loves you only when they think they can control you, that is not love. If they become kind only after discovering what you can do for them, that is not regret. It is calculation. My name is still Maren Alden. I am still quiet. but I no longer allow anyone to confuse my silence with surrender. The best revenge I ever took was not buying their house, exposing them online, or watching them carry boxes to the street. It was building a life so peaceful that their chaos could no longer enter it. Thank you for watching and staying with me until the end. If this story made you think about betrayal, boundaries, or the true meaning of justice, please share your thoughts in the comments. And if you would like to hear more emotional stories like this, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Always remember, the door that closes on disrespect may be the same door that opens to your freedom.